Hi everybody, Guy here. Cheers. And today's book is Triangle by Isaac Asimov. Now, I've had this book for quite a while, and in an effort to make amends for my literary crime of having unread books, I grabbed it off the shelf and discovered it's actually three books in one. Am I the only one that gets that reference anymore? Well, it's a compilation, don't you know, of Isaac Asimov's three earliest novels. Pebble in the Sky, The Stars Like Dust, and The Currents of Space. The first one is Pebble in the Sky, and it was published in 1950. The next two following shortly thereafter. At about the same time, he was doing the first Robot and Foundation novels. So, brand new author, there he is. At the dawn of the sci-fi genre, and yes, I know there's been plenty of sci-fi since about the 12th century, but the 1950s was its gelling. Space age and atomics, and the baby boom producing a whole generation of nerds who thought they'd be commuting to the jobs on the moon by jetpack somewhere around 1970. We had Galaxy and Amazing magazines, and later Asimov's own magazine that we boomer nerds bought by the truckload. Ah, those were the days. Now, of course, it all reads rather quaintly now, which is to be expected as the decades roll by and our tastes become more sophisticated, or at least they should. But there's a certain joy in visiting your hometown and seeing the old haunts where you and that gang of yours became the old people that we've turned into. And, you know, this is a really beat up book that I've got. I mean, it's actually what I've discovered, best I can discover. It was printed in 1961, and take a look. Here's all the novels that they've listed by Asimov at that time, so wow. By that time, he was pretty prolific with his writing. But these are the starts. These are the first two. These are the first three. And it starts out with Pebble in the Sky, which is, as I said, Asimov's first novel. And surprisingly, one that holds up rather well after all this time. Even if Asimov got the tech a little wrong, you know, like microfiche. Okay, proof that even the most prescient of scientists are trapped by the tech of their time. And the book is well written too, fast-paced and interesting, with not too much exposition and hard science splaining. Not too much. Cheers again. So what's it about? Well, Joseph Schwartz is walking down a Chicago street in the late 1940s when he is transported hundreds of thousands of years into the future as a chemical experiment involving uranium in the building next to him goes awry. Between one step and the next, he ends up in a woodland somewhere near the town of Chica, a radiation-free oasis on a radiation-imbued Earth. We had, of course, by this time in history, that long-feared nuclear war which so overshadowed the 1950s, and which looks a bit more likely now than it did then. The Earth is a galactic backwater, sneered at, shunned by the rest of humanity because of its radioactive taint and the fanatic beliefs of its resident ancients, with a capital A, who insist the Earth was the original home of humanity. Oh, posh. Humanity developed simultaneously on all the other worlds. You Earthers are just a bunch of inbred radioactive variants. Now, somehow, Schwartz ends up as a volunteer for a new medical device called the Synopsifier. Really? Isaac, you couldn't come up with something better than that? Which supposedly enhances the memory because this Schwartz is a throwback with actual facial hair, and he can't speak a lick of the local lingo, so this might help get him with the program so he can work for the farmer who found him, because the farmer needs to cover the existence of the farmer's father, who is an old man in hiding because there's something called the 60, which is the age when the ancients decide you've lived long enough, thank you very much, here's the orange room. Well, at least they don't turn them into Soylent Green. The Synopsifier turns Schwartz into Professor X. And the next thing you know, we've got galactic-wide plots to destroy the rest of humanity and idiot bureaucrats, and proof that people really don't change that much, time and distance notwithstanding. I read this when I was a tween, like, 12, 13, something, and I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it again after all this time. I've always remembered a couple of scenes from this book, always, that, since first reading it. The one with the professor who was running the chemical experiment back in 1949-50 Chicago, searching the paper for stories of people who have mysteriously disappeared because he knew he screwed up. And Schwartz standing in a field looking at stars he no longer recognized while quoting Browning. Now, I expected when I started reading it again that it would be campy and dated, but it's not bad. It's actually pretty good. It does have the 1950s characteristics, the mad scientists, the intrepid hero, and the spunky smart girl who becomes the romantic interest. You can almost hear her going, "My hero," to the hero, a guy named Ala Varden, who is a Syrian from Sirius, not the country, who is an archaeologist who comes to Earth to test the concept of Earth as indeed humanity's origin. There's even a mention of Trantor, which is kind of funny. But if you're going to read this more as a history lesson than anything, about how the golden age of science fiction started, because face it, there's much better science fiction out there now. Thanks, of course, to Asimov. Then there's the second book. And again, I didn't read these in order in the book. I read them in order of what I guess was their publication history. And it looks like The Stars Like Dust followed Pebble in the Sky quickly. And, boy, it's now hundreds of thousands of years into the future again, and humanity has turned into imbecilic simpletons who are easily duped by the silliest of plots. I mean, the main story here is a bit hard to swallow. Brian Fellon, the son of the rancher of Widimos, which I guess means he's the head cattleman of the planet, is caught up in a plot to destroy the Tyranni, who have taken over his home world and engineered the execution of his father for well, something. There's a vegan, or a vegan, you know, somebody from Vega, not a meat eschewing effete, who would be a traitor on a rancher world, or quickly starved. There is a princess who simply falls head over heels in love with Brian for reasons having to do with proximity more than anything. And Brian rejects her because her father, the near comatose leader of the Riadan Empire, a vassal state to the tyranny, however you say it, murdered his father, but Brian does provide her everything a space girl needs, like cosmetics and perfume and dresses, while they make their escape from the clutches of the Tyranni in a Tyranni ship that the Tyranni left for him to steal, because it's the only kind of ship the Tyranni can easily track across the galaxy. Oh man. But back to good form with the third novel, The Currents of Space, which is a whodunit in space. On the planet Floriana, Rick is a gibbering half-wit, barely functional worker on a Kurt farm, in constant need of attendance by Valona, the one person willing to tolerate his infantile behavior, when all of a sudden, Rick starts remembering things he shouldn't. Like, he's from Earth. He's a spatio-analyst, a highfalutin kind of technical scientist who measures the various elements that waft through space. And last year, he discovered something that dooms Floriana. So how did he end up a gibbering idiot? Psychic probe. Because the ruling Sarkites can't have their Kurt monopoly interrupted by something as pesky as worldwide destruction. So what's Kurt? Well, think of it as spun gold. We are then off on a galaxy-wide, somewhat wild chase between Sarkites and Florianians and Trantorians. Yes, Trantor. This book actually gives you some insight into how Trantor became the empire of Foundation fame. The whole book is rather decent and makes you wonder what was going on with, the stars like dust. Was that just a throwaway to meet contract obligations, or was it the victim of too much to do because, Asimov was also doing Robot series and Foundation series, and man, the man was busy. And yes, there are some rather credulity-stretching things in here along the lines of, you know that I know that you know, but don't know that she knows that you know that I know kind of nonsense. And there's items deliberately withheld from the reader's attention until you get to the end to give it that whole whodunit feel of things. But still, pretty good. Better than that stars like dust thing. See you later.